Commander Conkins and Captain Foley here yet again for another Trekyards mission briefing, your Monday goodness, looking at a fan film ship. There are many fan films out there, and we're looking at some of the best ones for this variety show, as we like to call it occasionally. But what are we doing today, Stuart?
This week we're taking a look at what could very well be the next step in the evolution of post-Nemesis design aesthetic, for Starfleet at least. That being the USS Archer, as seen in Star Trek Renegades.
Designed as a collaboration between legendary Rick Sternbach and the Renegades' own production designer Scott Nakada, this new Sternbach class light cruiser was part of the new wave of Starship post-Dominion War styles.
It's worth noting that we have already done some planning towards this ship's full episode. We have talked with Scott and Nakada to flesh out much of the information, and we will, I'm sure, get into a little of that today, but let's get on to the first picture.
It's a nice picture.
It is. It's a nice looking ship, I gotta say. It definitely has that Rick look to it, with the pointed
everything
arrowhead shapes. Yeah.
Although since you always said you like it, that is the episode over. Summary done. No. But do you remember when you first saw it then? Renegades back in 2000 and, well, two and a bit years ago. Do you remember what your first thoughts were?
Yeah, I was pretty impressed with it. It didn't really stand out too much to me, to be honest. It just looked kind of like a generic Star Trek ship or Starfleet ship. But again, watching Renegades a few times, it really grows on you, and it's a nice looking and it's a well-balanced ship as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I think same for me. Obviously, before you work on a movie, you just think of it as a fan. So seeing the first pictures was like, okay, that's Starfleet, yeah. I think the whole design aesthetic was getting more pointy, was getting more aggressively different. I think you're right. Once you sort of get used to that style, it makes sense. But I think first look, it was like, it's very, So it's kind of on that, it's like a sidestep to the Federation aesthetic, and we say that about a lot of fan designs. It's like, it's almost there, or, that's just pushing a bit in the wrong direction. This, I think, I mean, you've always got to remember, Starfleet has multiple different styles of design. You know, Equinox, Defiant, Prometheus, totally radically different, really. So, you know, this is a different style of ship and a different style of role. So you can give it some leniency, but it's certainly a interesting ship. But what's the first thing that grabs you on this picture specifically?
Well, there's two things that automatically jump out to me. That's the bulk of section behind the bridge on top of the saucer, which I really like. I think that's a great addition.
Yeah.
And then secondly, the broken up phaser strips. It's not just one main strip or two main strips. They've broken it up, and I rather like that, actually.
Yeah, that was it is seen on the Prometheus with lots of multi little phaser strips, especially in the split sections. But yeah, the idea behind this was that rather than having one giant strip that can be damaged or whatever, these are called hot standby phasers, hence the red line in the middle. And these were technically in the Prometheus ones, but this is a Rick-designed evolution, and then Scott sort of drew it. It's designed to be that, you know, they can fire multiple phasers in multiple directions rather than having to worry about a single powerful phaser, and therefore you can, you know, do multiple hits on multiple targets.
That makes sense too for damage. If someone does get damaged by phaser fire, you don't compromise the entire ring. You've got other rings. So
I mean, we've never honestly seen like proper big CG battles with TNG ships to see what if a torpedo hits the phaser strip, does the whole thing go down? I mean, you need that energy, you know, generating to the single point and then fire. Well, what if that circuit's damaged? We've never seen it, but does that break it?
Yeah, or it could cause an overload in the rest of the emitters, so the whole strip might be useless
or explode.
So this,
Jesus,
yeah. So this makes a lot of sense to me. I really like that design evolution.
And it does. It gives it a different feel. It really does. It makes it feel more. See, the saucer, it both feels kind of cluttered in the sense there's lots of different colours, which is, I don't know, they pop more, but also it feels very simple. I think the lack of full phaser strip, there's just lots of empty hull. I don't know, it gives it an interesting feel.
Yeah, this is, well, it's not a really smaller ship either. It's kind of Galaxy class. Just a little smaller than the Galaxy,
560 or so meters, and the Galaxy's like 600 and something. So yeah, it's
yeah, okay.
It's pretty big. But there is a scale chart later on.
Okay.
But yeah, it's an interesting ship. And I think best go to the next couple of pictures, otherwise we'll keep talking. But yeah, the next picture is it in the movie, and this is obviously the lower section. Any thoughts on this?
It's, for some reason, Star Trek Online pops immediately to mind. It does look like a Star Trek Online ship in this picture. Kind of a squished. It almost has like a Galaxy class
Yeah.
deflector on the front there.
Yep. Yep.
Almost exactly the same. But yeah, the secondary hull looks kind of compressed a little bit too much.
Yeah, it's kind of Voyager-esque, but more linking to the galaxies. You're right, it's the galaxy squished, but with a Voyager feel. And it does give it that interesting sleek. It does give it that interesting compressed mission profile. I think it works. I was talking to Tobias about this when I did the documentary about how, some ships you can render from certain angles. It's like they always say for the Galaxy class, it's got a couple of angles that work beautifully and a lot that really don't. And from what, all doing all the renders from all these different shows that we do for Trekyards, I've also learned that, and he said that a lot of these angles, it doesn't work so well for this ship, and so I guess these are some of the better angles for the Archer. And I think
it's like the JJ prize. It only has one good angle. That's directly from the side. It looks good.
Or far in the distance.
Oh, people are going to be screaming at me.
The angle.
Or spec in the distance.
Yeah. But one thing that hits me about this is the warp engines, specifically the Bussards. Because we're used to having two larger sections on the top and then hull at the bottom. That's sort of or that sort of feel. This really stood out to me when I first saw it as having 4 distinct Bussard collectors, and for some reason that really jumped out to me as evolved, advanced, the next step.
Well, that being said, though, you look at the Enterprise D and you got the full front end, like all around, encompassing is red. This just put like a drill in there to section it off.
That is very true.
Because so I don't know if maybe just strengthening it a bit this way. I don't know. Possibly
though, because the D they're not the most thick Bussards. This feels like the E has quite thick into the hull Bussards, but then doubling it. So I think it's the combination of aesthetics. But you're right. I mean, the D certainly has a lot of thing, but it gives it that more sort of touchscreen feel. I don't know why. That sort of advanced, simple yet cleanly efficient look. I don't know. It's just something that really hits me.
Does this not look like Star Trek Online to you, though? Like a Star Trek Online ship from this angle? It reminds me of the Constitution class that they first used as promotional, where the secondary hull was kind of funny shaped. That's exactly what my eyes drawn to, and that's exactly what I see as a Star Trek Online ship.
I kind of get what you mean, but I think it's too similar to normal aesthetic to be Star Trek Online. Like they haven't added enough random bits. Possibly the new aesthetic, because they're getting more true to the original Trek design now with some of the latest stuff. I think this is like one of their safer designs if it was anything. But yeah, I see what you mean. It's got some aggressive lines. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not crazy. Good.
Well, on to the next.
Don't even say anything.
On the next photo, this is Rick did the first designs. Scott amalgamated them into his own, what would work for the show design, and this is the drawn illustration side view of that. And it says the length 1769 feet, which is about 560 meters, I think. Warp 9.96. Any thoughts on this, Stuart?
From the side, the saucer almost looks top heavy almost, because the saucer is so long compared to the rest of the ship. Especially, well, that being said, look at the Galaxy too. I mean,
but that is one of its most distinguishing features of strangeness. So it's not.
This looks like an Intrepid and a Nova class had a baby. That's what this looks like.
with a sovereign squished hull or saucer, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that was obviously the task, wasn't it, to push the aesthetic forward, and everything gets sleeker, smaller, more compact, more advanced. I hadn't really I've had all these thoughts before, but really pointing out again, you're right. The saucer is very long in comparison to the ship. That doesn't really come across in the other shots. And I think that connection point with the neck is very thin and very it's not smooth. It's very angular, and yet
clunky almost.
Yeah, it's very strange, but at the same time, it kind of does flow into the hull.
Now, do we know? Does this ship saucer separate? Is that a separation plane there?
It does. Okay. Yes. I don't know if that's the exact plane, but yeah, it can separate. But yeah, it's interesting. I like the detailing on the pylons though. For some reason, I like how those are detailed. It's a little thing. And what do you think of Warp 9.96? Any thoughts of warp drive there, Stuart?
Not really. I mean, once you get to, I've noticed with the ships we do, a lot of them get to warp 9.96, warp 9.99. Like, it's kind of a gray area. I know it's exponential increase, so that that little fraction makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Well, relatively, but still, I mean, where can they go from here unless they change the warp scale again? Because we know they've adjusted the warp scale a few times during the Star Trek histories.
I don't know. Well, we know that the Prometheus was the fastest in the fleet at warp 9.99 for certain lengths. So whenever I see these fan designs saying, "Oh, warp 9.99," it's like, well, okay, great. So I kind of like this is only warp 9.96, which was Voyager's maximum. Because it's a light cruiser, it's not a heavy cruiser, it's not the battleship, it's not the warship, it's a light cruiser. It's a although light cruiser for post Dominion, which means it's still more decked out, relative. But yeah.
All right, so let's move on to the next picture. We got a size comparison with the very cool and sexy Klingon battleship that John Eves designed, and the Icarus, done by Scott and Nakada. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say. The Klingon ships aren't that big, to be honest.
It puts that back into perspective, and we've just done an episode on that. As hopefully you've all watched it. Yeah. If not, check it on Trekyards.com. But I mean, we know the Klingon ship was much bigger than Katinga. Like, that's a big step forward, and it's like, wow, okay, it's pretty small compared to the Archer, relatively speaking.
We know that the Icarus is a very powerful ship, and it's very compact. Mm-hmm. A lot of power and a little package, I think, and this kind of shows that off. Now the Icarus isn't so small though compared to like Connie and stuff. Yeah, I think it's relatively on par size-wise, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. Because I keep forgetting that. I honestly keep forgetting that the Archer is as big as it is. It doesn't look like almost a Galaxy class size ship. It looks much smaller. So I keep throwing these other ships into smaller scales, and I shouldn't.
It is interesting though. Like they obviously invented the scales for these ships as they were designing them, and so there's this one fight in the movie where these three ships are going at it, and it's kind of interesting to make the Klingon ship so much smaller, relatively speaking, like that. So it's interesting jumps because it's like, I mean, Starfleet ships have got bigger and more hulking, bulk, whatever, and so it makes sense that curve would make that the biggest ship. But then the Klingons do like the maneuverability, so it's kind of it does make sense to me that the maneuverable Klingon ship fires on the bigger, less maneuverable Federation ship, but then it can still hold, I don't know, scale.
And the Klingons usually work in packs of 3, so they don't need bigger ships per se. The smaller, more maneuverable ships and better tactics as far as more ships goes. So
yeah, it's just scale's an interesting thing, and we know it says a lot with the window size, but to pick the certain size, it's an interesting process. But anyway.
All right, so on to the next picture. This is the Star Trek Renegades bridge of the Archer.
Is this the first time you've seen this picture?
This is the first time I've seen this picture, absolutely.
Yeah, I was very happy to get this for the documentary.
Well, we got the familiar horseshoe, of course, like the Galaxy. And that's an interesting center console, I got to say. Is that like multiple screens kind of layered?
As in the back wall?
Yeah, in the back, in the very center there, underneath the emblem.
Quite possibly. Yeah, this was Scott and Nakada's original concept when they had slightly more budget. When they wanted slightly more budget. They knew they were getting the D set pieces, which is why it's based on that. And they knew they were going to reuse to save on budget and to actually allow them to have this bridge, because bridges are the most expensive thing a lot of the time of productions. They were reusing the wall panels from Chekhov's office, which when we're talking to Scott, we have worked out that in the time post-Dominion War, they're running out of supplies, and so they built a standard, chop and change aesthetic piece. That's why a lot of these newer ships have this aesthetic, because it made them more efficient to build. But this was the original version, where he wanted to again push aesthetics into the more touchscreen panels, holographic panels, rather than having physical displays. That's why you see a lot of panels at the back there. He wanted the 2 side panels, or the 2 command, second in command chair. He wanted those, although they never appeared in the final version. flipped the consoles, the helm and the ops. Is that what they were called?
Yeah, operations and helm. Yeah.
Yeah, flip them to give it a slightly different feel, and obviously the horseshoe and make the captain a bit more raised. So it's very similar to Galaxy, and it is meant to be about the same size as the Galaxy class bridge. Reusing parts to again save on cost and just to make sure the ship can be built in time. But I kind of like this design. I like seeing a different take on a familiar style. I think it's very functional. I think it's not, because the Galaxy class we know is meant to be the not the hot rod. It's, well, a lot of people call it the hotel in space. So this is much more the functional version of that.
This is the motel in space. It's smaller than a hotel.
The Motel 6, yeah. I like it. Which takes on to the next picture, which is the actual final version of what it looks like in the movie, with a lot of digital set replacement. And again, watch the Star Trek documentary I made on Renegades disc, so donate and get the disc to watch that amazing documentary. This is what they actually had to deal with on the production. They had the horseshoe, they didn't manage to get the two-side chairs. They split up the helm and ops so that the captain could walk in between and also get some cool in-between shots, which I think works really well. And they added the two side alcoves in post and also the MSD at the back. Much more simple because of budgetary reasons, although I quite like this design. I think it actually works really well.
But then again, it goes back to what I said earlier. This seems like a much smaller ship with this bridge. It just does not feel as big as nearly as big as a Galaxy. I know it's not quite as big, but again, your bridge doesn't have to be big and comfortable either. But with the considering that this ship has 20 decks and a crew of like 200 personnel,
yeah, 250.
It just seems like there'd be a lot more room than this for a ship that size.
Well, I mean, like I say, they built it around the same. Well, you can see how big the horseshoe is. I mean, it's the same physical dimension as the Galaxy bridge. I think it's just because there's lots of empty space,
Yeah,
it's just,
I wish they wouldn't run out of money, because I would have liked to see Scott Nakada's vision on there. That would have been beautiful.
Yeah, but I do like how they sort of saved it in post, and just the simple feel of it. Yeah. The horseshoe and the MSD at the back does look really sexy, I think.
It does.
And I do like the swapping of the helm and console. I just like it. It works well for me. I don't like Alvarez's step though. I don't know why there's a step there.
Yeah, I don't know. I agree.
But apart from that, I think it looks pretty cool.
Yeah, and his first officer is very cool as well. That's all I have to say about that.
I'd have her as my first officer when I get captaincy any day. Yeah.
All right, so the next picture is a close-up of the bridge, untextured. Looks like a work in progress, obviously. But like I said, those bits behind it, they're kind of reminiscent of Voyager in a way. How Voyager had the ready room and the conference room on each side of the bridge from the front. So it's a neat feature, I think, and the way it draws back into the spine of the secondary hull is very cool.
It's a very functional feature to have just deck one be the bridge, and then you have to go down to all the other parts of the ship. I think that's a waste. I do like having this extra geometry at the back. Although it's interesting that they've got those like cut out sections. Why not have it all integrated? I like it stylistically, but it feels like they're sort of wasting space there. Maybe there's
a little, yeah.
Maybe there's an outer hatch there, and that's how you get. Maybe that's a safer bit to have the door. I don't know. But yeah, these are work in progress shots from Tobias. The bridge modules, Scott actually drew specifically to get a lot of detail, because we don't judge a ship by its bridge module, but that's meant to sort of symbolize the head of the ship, and so he really did detail it out, and you can see all the different panels, and I love it. A fan designed this, and it just looks so good. I just wanted to highlight how much detail is actually put into the ship physically in the production parts. Yeah.
Well, Tobias does amazing work, so we all know that.
Does indeed. And the next photo is an underside shot, again showing a lot of detail, a lot of escape pods, different style of escape pod. You can really see the blaring phaser strip there.
And they even went back to the old style photon torpedo launchers.
They did.
Just like the refit, yeah.
Yeah, this is an earlier version of the model where he literally just took the geometry of his refit and just stuck it in there, because everyone loves that. I always try and include neck-mounted torpedo launchers because they work beautifully. Although when we talked to Scott, we were discussing how the bottom navigation dome part. That's where the quantum torpedo launcher is on the Sovereign, and it looks like there's a torpedo launcher there. And I think Tobias did intend it to be a torpedo launcher, but we talked to Scott, and there is no quantums because in his timeline the quantums are more rare than that. They, only the top ships, and the light cruise doesn't need quantums, so I think it's meant to be a separate photon launcher. But yeah, it's good to have.
Interesting.
Good to have forward guns. But yeah, lots of detail.
All right, so let's move on to the next photo. We've got a shot of the underside of the secondary hull. Kind of interesting placement for phaser strips, don't you think? Two that close together.
Yeah. These sorts of these work in progress photos are interesting because the red of those phasers do punch out, and you can see how many strips are all over the ship. And this is still work in progress. If they fired a lot of them at the same time, this has got a lot of coverage. Really has a lot of coverage.
And I like the window placement and stuff. I like how there's looks almost like observation deck windows. A few different spots on the ship, which makes it probably more comfortable for the crew and stuff inside. So very interesting attention to detail.
And if you notice at the back of the bottom of the back of the secondary hull, that's the two aft torpedo launchers, which you never get to see in the film, but there they are, neatly plated and neatly placed. And very cool. Tractor beam emitter, I believe, is the little detail underneath that. I seem to recall. Yeah,
that would make sense.
Yeah.
All right, so the next shot is a very cool size comparison chart, probably thrown together by you by the looks of it.
This is the one we made during the talk with. Oh no, this was the Icarus episode because I wanted to see how big the hell Icarus was. But yeah, this is good for the Archer as well.
I was right earlier saying this about the Connie size. Yeah, that's right. Cool.
So what do you think scale wise for the Archer?
Like I said, it doesn't feel as big as it is. I would put it as a Voyager size. And judging by looking at the windows, even look at the windows on Voyager compared to the windows on, the Archer and the Galaxy. They always say that windows is the way to determine scale.
I think it matches I think it matches the D scale, but that's windows.
It does, but I guess the D had pretty big windows, so. They had the long, luxurious windows, like my hair.
Remember, these are all fan models, apart from the Icarus and the Archer, so the window size is variable. But I like though that the engines are very much the same size as the Galaxy, which straight away feels more natural, just sleeked out and pushed forward. And you can definitely tell the shape of the Galaxy. Like there is so many stylistic connections to that, much more than the E, because that's just one long shape. You just bring it down, you make it more Voyager-esque for the neck. I mean, you can definitely see it's a Federation aesthetic there.
Well, the way I see it is this: the bottom curvature of the Archer is very reminiscent of the D. The top curvature of the Archer is very reminiscent of Voyager, and then you got a Sovereign engine stuck on. So it's a combination of all three ships.
Yeah. And that's what they would do. I mean, that's design styles. What worked best, slimmer profile. It's interesting. Yeah, but I think it fits. I think it fits pretty well.
Yeah, it's a nice little ship for sure. Well, big ship.
Little.
See, there you go, saying it's little again.
No, we can see the Defiant. We can see the little ship of the fleet there.
Yeah.
Anyway, but the next photo is an aft shot from the movie, and it shows those nice big impulse grills and a very large shuttle bay. Big doors.
Indeed. Do we know the shuttle complement?
We do, but we won't say it yet. We did.
That's full episode information.
Yes, we did work it out as part of the episode. And another little fun detail, the aft of those engines, if you can see on the right-hand side of the photo, those little detail parts, that's from Tobias's Enterprise D model. He didn't know what to put there, so he just nicked them straight off the D. It's a bit of a continuity there.
Cool.
So what do you think of the...
Nice little fact.
So what do you think of the back then? Because this is the first time I've actually seen the back properly. What's your take on the curvature and how it all combines?
I like it a lot. It's very reminiscent though of the refit. Those inner glowing grills and the impulse engines are kind of stylistically like the refit. But again, the secondary hull seems a little squashed to me. But I mean, I think it looks good still. I do like it.
What's interesting about this perspective is that, and I know we've talked about this with Scott, but it's been a while, and that's extra information that we'll have to remember sort of thing. But those doors look like they go up to the top of that secondary hull module. Obviously, the neck then is more decks. So that would imply, bar the underside, that the shuttle bay is probably 3 floors high, 3 decks, more possibly if the secondary hull's only 4 or 5 decks. I mean, that's basically the entire height of the secondary hull.
Mm-hmm. I would say at least 4 decks, yeah, possibly 5. But yeah, looks like a big shuttle bay as far as that goes. But then again, a lot of shuttle bays, they're bigger at the opening, and then of course you get the control room and stuff that lowers down, and then you eventually just into one deck level. So it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I think from Taunton to Scott, it's meant to be 2 distinct flight decks, one for one sort of shuttle, one for another, and they go in, and it has been thought through. But I like how much having the entire back end for your shuttle bay door. Normally the refit, it does slim down quite a lot, so the door is relative to the size. This is pretty much the entire length of it, so it's a different sort of feel. But you could definitely fit quite a lot of runabouts in there. I mean, that is a runabout launching beast, if you wanted it to be.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so the next shot is it being attacked by Johnny's.
Oh, it's not. No, they meet up, remember? But it makes you think they're going to battle.
Fine. Well, they're meeting up. Yes.
Yeah, I just picked this for the engines. What you thought of the nacelles and the sort of side profile a little bit.
I'm not a huge fan of those nacelles. They look all out of proportion to me. They need to be longer, in my opinion. But
interesting.
But you don't think so?
No, I hadn't thought that. I mean, if you gave them more E nacelles, that actually might work even better, given the length of the saucer. I should kit bash this with E nacelles at some point. I like the nacelles. I think they're really interesting design. They feel like kind of a bulky. They do feel bulky, but very advanced, as if they're sort of high performance. The next to a first gen style of newer warp coils. Whatever. So it's like that slightly bulkier version, but yeah. I like them. I think it kind
of goes back to what I said earlier too, though, about Star Trek Online. Those engines feel very Star Trek Online to me.
Yeah, now that I can see.
They really do.
That I can see. Cool. And the next photo is a front shot, and this is to really highlight the deflector and how many windows there are on the ship. And that, yes, there's a 10 forward built in. But yeah, lots of big windows.
Yeah, they are big actually. They look like at least 7-8 foot high windows.
Well, a deck height. The deck
would be my guess. A deck height, yeah. Look at them. I mean, they're not like little portholes like you see on the refit.
Well, we know that the D has deck wide windows at the front. I mean, it is a thing to have. But also take on that deflector and how the front profile is, I suppose.
What's my take on it? Yeah. Again, like I said, it looks a lot like it looks almost exactly like Enterprise D deflector.
Although with an inner...
I don't have a problem with it. I rather like it. I think it looks good.
Although it's got an inner part like the Voyager, having that smaller grill and then the even smaller thin... I think that's very much what Voyager has. So a nice amalgam, but very, very beefy. That I think that's a high-performance deflector.
And just going on to the last picture, which happens to be the first picture, ironically enough, which is a great beauty shot of the Archer to end on, and a great ship overall. I think the fact that it's a Sternbach class is awesome.
Yeah.
And it's a good amalgamation of work from Sternbach, Scott Nakada, and Tobias Richter. They did an amazing job on this ship, and I would love to see more of it. I really would.
Yeah, it's a very interesting and making sense sort of ship. Bit odd, but I think we see it in motion. It really works, and yeah, I'd love to see it do more things, which is what we say for a lot of ships, because there needs to be more Trek. That's what we're saying. More Trek. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that is it for another Trekyards fan design. Let us know what you think of this ship in the comments below. Do you think it works, doesn't work, engines, Star Trek Online, phaser strips, everything we talked about, let us know. And of course, check out Star Trek Renegades. It is a pretty cool movie, or pilot, we should say, because they are making more. And it's just that great first step. And that is it, like I say, for another Trekyards Mission Briefing Monday style. Check out our other episodes on Monday for other fan film ships. And then next month we'll do some other different style of ship. And we have some ideas, and you'll see some new stuff. Tease.
Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. But yeah, tune next week for another Trekyards Mission Briefing. Until then, this is Commander Conkins.
And Captain Foley.
And we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.